G'day everyone and welcome back to the Big Bros podcast. My name is Jeremy. Welcome if it's your first time joining us on the show. I'm joined by my lovely friend and co-host Ilan, and we're also joined today by a very special guest, Ben Lowe. Welcome to the show. How are you going, mate?
What's up, lads? Thanks so much for having me. Yeah, lads, I'm great. I'm honestly, life's good. Life's good. How about you boys? How's your day been?
Day's been terrific. Can't complain. Sun's out here in Melbourne. We know you're up in sunny Queensland, so we get very excited about the sunshine here because it comes out in peaks. But you're quite blessed, aren't you? And what a absolute blessing it is to have with the sunshine there quite often.
Yeah, boys, it's actually been pretty fucking doom and gloom the last few weeks, man. But we've seen some sunshine over the weekend and definitely lapped it up and made the most of it. So it's good to see some sunshine back, boys.
Excellent.
We love that.
Without further ado, Ben, you meet someone out and about, you shake their hands. What is the introduction to Ben Lowe?
So who would I describe myself as?
Yeah.
Just an everyday guy trying to make a change in the world, man. Just a real chill dude trying to make a change in the world.
Absolutely love that. And I think if more people harbored that sort of energy, we'd live in a much better place. But we love getting into specifics. What does that look like for you on a day-to-day basis?
Oh, man. So just showing up with the best energy I possibly can, trying to put a smile on someone else's face, little moments of gratitude, little moments of just kindness for other people, just going out of my way to try and make other people smile, because it doesn't cost anything to put a smile on someone else's face, right? And we do live, like you said, in obviously it would make the world a better place if more people did things like this, but we do live in such a negatively imposed world where, everyone's looking for, almost like a way to get ahead of other people. They're putting other people down. And social media, even just the media and all that sort of stuff doesn't really help, because we're always trying to compare ourselves to other people. And this gives us this impression of, not being worthy, not being good enough. And I mean, just by going out of your way to have a conversation with someone, you don't know what they're going through. You put a smile on their face. It might actually, spark a little bit of a thought for, what, maybe I am good enough, because who's that guy to come and talk to me? And if he feels like he can come talk to me, then maybe I am worthy. There's little moments like that. That's me in a nutshell, and what I like to do on a daily basis.
Love that, mate. And look, when we first jumped on here, and for those that are watching us as well, they'd be absolutely blessed to see the aura of the sunglasses that you currently have on your dome, mate. And so Ben's talking to us here with some vibrant red sunglasses on, and it's hard to not smile and feel that infectious energy when you're looking at someone with a smile and red sunnies on. So, mate, was that infectious energy always something that you strived off radiating to other people, or has that been something that you've really tried to, pursue more recently?
Man, growing up, I was a really timid kid. I mean, looking at me now, and probably, if we were to have a conversation, you probably wouldn't think it, but I was really, really timid. I was someone that was very shy. I had no confidence. I lacked self-worth. And so to answer your question in short, and I'm sure we'll go into it a little bit more in depth, I definitely wasn't always this person. I definitely wasn't always someone that radiated this kind of energy. Didn't have this much of a presence. That's definitely a fact, right? Because for a very, very long time, I always thought that, I wasn't good enough. I'd never make anything of myself. I was going to go nowhere in life. And so, as of, let's say the last few years after being on this journey of personal growth with a lot of things that happened in my life, it's definitely been something that I tried to pursue more. And I guess that's a big part of why I do, carry myself the way I do now, because by carrying myself like this, when people get to know me and know my story, it also gives other people hope that no matter what they've gone through, no matter where they've been, they can overcome anything and can come out the other side shining and smiling like I am,
No, mate, that's a fantastic message to promote. And honestly, we've done our kind of due diligence on you and kind of the things that you've endured from, I guess, the substance abuse, but also being in incarceration. A lot of people who end up in incarceration, they don't usually return and kind of adapt well back to normal day life, but you clearly have. And we'd love to get into that, but I'm more curious to know, what was Ben like in his adolescence, in that time of formative growth? Because that's what a lot of our audience is. There are a bunch of people going through very formative periods in their life. They don't know what the right direction is for them. What was that time of your life like?
Man, it's a really good question. I love this question because I guess, going into that, that's where everything begins, right? It begins in our younger years. And so if I just start my story, I guess at the most notable thing that I can remember from being a young man and being a young adult, probably 13 is the first number that comes to mind. There was a lot of shit that happened in my life prior to that, but 13 is the first number that came to mind. It was a real turning point for me, right? And so, if you look back then, from the outside looking in, my life would have looked like, a perfect picture of what a perfect family looks like. I had a mum and dad, little sister, pet dog. We lived in a really nice house, went to really good schools, lived in a good area, was raised well. And so, like I said, from the outside looking in, things would look perfect. But obviously, it's not always that way, right? Within the family unit, getting the love that we need and getting treated the way that we need to be treated for us to actually be able to grow in the way that we need to grow. And so 13, once again, is the age that comes up for me as the most notable thing from my childhood, because that was the age that my parents split up. And so, like, from then on out, from 13 years onwards, it was just chaos within the household. I had to sort of take on. So dad left mum for another woman. And we didn't know that for a couple of years. But anyways, long story short, if I keep going into that, we'll be here all night. But yeah, so from 13 onwards, I sort of had to carry the burden of my mother's emotions. And she was very chaotic, lovely woman, lovely woman, but just no level of emotional intelligence or emotional regulation, which obviously then leads to outbursts. And for us as kids, being in that household, growing up in such a chaotic home, it created a very, very interesting dynamic for us to grow up with. And so 13 onwards, I felt like I was constantly fighting to try and get dad's attention, trying to get mum's attention. Dad wasn't very present our whole lives, really, because he was always working. And I mean, this is something that I'm actually guilty of now with my son, who's 6 years old. I noticed myself not being present with him. In my head, I'm working to create a future for him, but they don't give a fuck about that. We can swear on here, right? We can swear?
Absolutely, mate. Go for it.
Encourage it, if anything.
They don't give a fuck about the fact that where they're working. They don't see that. What they see is a parent not being present. And that's exactly what I saw from a very young age with my dad, and so that really brought up a lot of abandonment. And so my relationship with my dad wasn't that great. My relationship with my mum wasn't that great. And then so from 13 onwards, I was just constantly trying to find my way in the world. And I sort of should have said this a little bit earlier. Even I guess my entire life, I never felt like I really fit in. I couldn't really find my group, my people, the people I could relate to. I had plenty of friends at school, but I'd bounce from group to group and just really didn't feel like I was a part of anything, right? And so I guess my whole teenage life and even up to my young adult life was spent trying to find my place in the world. And so 15 years old, so 13, I started drinking to deal with the fact that my parents had broken up. And to develop such an unhealthy coping mechanism at such a young age, because this was my first unhealthy coping mechanism, is crazy, because obviously that shaped my life to be the way that I am today. And so 13, started drinking most weekends. Fast forward to 15, started smoking. And my mum caught wind of this. And I was living with her at the time, and she gave me this ultimatum. She's like, if you want to live in my house, you need to follow my rules. You need to toe the line, and otherwise you can move out. Had you ever asked me back then, I was playing the victim. I would have told everyone that I was kicked out, right? Mum kicked me out. Oh, poor me, right? And so I moved out of home at 15 years old. I started drinking a lot more. I started smoking weed. And I was still trying to put myself through school, because in my head, I've been told Mum was a school teacher. So she told me that the most important thing was get your year 12 certificate. I somewhat believe that, right? And so here I was trying to still go to school. I was working at McDonald's, which was my only real job, my first real job, my only real job I ever had. So I worked there from 13 to about 16. And I started selling pot as well, because I was like, well, I need to make ends meet. And working at Macca's isn't cutting it. I'm smoking this shit that everyone likes. And so the first time that I bought weed for myself, I bought an ounce and started selling it, because I was like, entrepreneur mindset. It was like, how can I make money? Easiest way to do it. I know people that like smoking weed. Cool. I'm going to do that. Makes sense. And so here I was, 15 years old, out in the big bad world, all by myself. And I was like, fuck yeah, how good is this freedom? But the fact of the matter is that I still really didn't know where I fit in. And so by smoking weed, I found my people, if you like, because anyone that's got drugs attracts anyone else that has drugs. And so it was like this false sense of being able to fit in, to belong. And all of a sudden I was like, well, that solves the problem. And then that really set the tone for how the next 15 years of my life played out. So I guess that's the high level of what took place for me as a young man, 15 years old. Fast forward to about 18, and I'd moved back in with my dad at this point for a little while. And me and him were fighting all the time. And when I moved back in with him, my drug business really kicked off. I was making ridiculous money for an 18-year-old. And anyways, one thing led to another, and some dumb drunk shit one night led to the front door of my family home being kicked in by 8 police officers that were there to execute a search warrant. And so here's my 4'0" Indonesian stepmother, loveliest lady you've ever met, that answers the door, no one else's home. And here's 8 cops storming through the house, like search warrant for Ben Lowe, just ripping my bedroom to pieces, and they found heaps of stolen property and all sorts of other shit, as well as obviously like weed and, there was a lot of stuff that took place, right? And you could say that was definitely the nail in the coffin for mine and my old boys' relationships. So before long, I was back out on the street by myself all over again. And this is when things really, really took a turn for the worse for me, because I went from having structure to then like this chaotic, just volatile environment within my life. I had no structure, no grounding. I had no support network, if you like. And that was all self-inflicted, if you ask me. Like, to be fair, like all the actions that I took led to me being kicked out from my dad's house and me and him not getting along. But once again, at the time, I played the victim. Poor me. And so I moved out of home again at 18, started smoking weed every day. Literally, my whole day consisted of sitting there playing Modern Warfare 2 on Xbox 360 and having dudes come and go from my house, smoking cones, selling drugs. It was just, that was life from 15 onwards. From 18 onwards. And I was, experimenting with other drugs, MDMA, acid. And the one thing that changed my life forever, ice. And so I remember specifically the conversation I had with the guy that gave me ice for the first time. He said to me, and these are the exact words, "Are you sure you want to try this? Because I can promise you your life will never be the same." And I was like, well, fuck. I know enough people that want this stuff. I can just start selling this as well. And so I upgraded my game from weed to ice. And the next 8 years of my life, so 18 through to 26, ended up looking like something you'd probably expect to see on an Underbelly TV episode.
Crazy stuff there, obviously, and easy for people like us to just sit back and to hear these things and just go wow and leave it at that. And I'm sure that you're used to hearing a lot of comments back after hearing your story, but is there ever a moment, and I'm sure it might happen, but when you are telling your story to people like us and you receive these comments back, but it kind of takes you back to that point in your earlier life where you just feel like still othered in a way, like they don't truly understand what you went through, and it still feels like maybe an empathetic response back or a sympathetic response back, but it's as if like those people hearing just still truly don't get it, and if so, how do you manage that feeling? Because I just know myself, like if you've experienced something pretty heavy and you're talking about that to other people, and you hear a response back like, wow, like I'm sorry to hear that, but you don't truly feel like they actually get it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do, man. And I guess that's a really good question, because once upon a time that would have been something that really bothered me. Before I did all this work on myself and became so secure within myself and obviously sure of my story, that would have been something that really bothered me, because people just didn't get it, right? But nowadays, it's not something that really bothers me, because I'm very open with my story. There's no shame, there's no guilt around anything, because I know that I went through what I went through to now be able to do what I do, which is helping men to overcome the same thing, right? And if it wasn't for me going through those things, I wouldn't be able to relate. I wouldn't be able to have these conversations. I wouldn't be able to serve the men that I serve. But in question to that, I did have a lot of shame and guilt, I struggled to have a conversation with guys like, Jeremy and Elan, right? I would have struggled to talk to you guys because there's nothing to relate to. Like, I got out of, I'm sure we'll get to further into this in a second, but I went to jail. I spent 4 years locked up, and that was across 6 different occasions, right? So you could say that I was a slow learner, to say the least. But, I remember getting out from jail one time and literally going to the barbershop, and old mate's like, "So how's your week been, bro?" "Pretty good. I just got out of jail." And he's like, "Oh, right. Well, how's the weather?" You know what I mean? Like, how do you relate to people? I've spent the last 15 years being a fucking ice addict. The last, 8 years being an ice addict. I was addicted to drugs for 15 years. If you didn't go to jail, or you didn't smoke ice, or you didn't take drugs heavily, I couldn't relate to you. If you went in that criminal world, I didn't know how to have a conversation with you. I had no idea. Because as a young man, I already struggled with confidence. I struggled to communicate with people, right? And so I learned to communicate and relate to people that were doing the same shit as I was, which was literally my whole life revolved around the drug. Like, for 8 years, the only time that I wasn't high on meth was when I was locked up, and I spent 4 years of that in jail, right? So all I was doing was being conditioned to the environment, because there's no rehabilitation in jail. There is no rehabilitation whatsoever. You get taken from the environment, right, which is out here using drugs, hanging around with people using drugs. Okay, you get taken from the environment that created the problem, put into another environment that incubates the problem. Now you're surrounded by other people that are, got drugs for cheaper, and you've got new customers, and you've got other criminals that you can relate to, right? And you're just like, oh, I'm going to get out and I'm going to make so much more money because now I've got a bigger network. And then you get put back into the same environment with no skills on how to get a job or how to write a resume or how to have a conversation with someone like you two, right? Like there's no way of relating there. There's no after jail care. You get put on parole and just, here's a $200 selling check. Off you go, mate. All the best. And you wonder why so many people end up back in the same cycle, because it's like, well, all I knew how to do was sell drugs. My only job I've ever had was flipping burgers at McDonald's from 13 to 16. Then I started selling drugs, right? Why would I want to do hard shit? Why wouldn't I just go back to doing what I always did, which is exactly what I did 6 times?
Yeah. Was there that turning point then where, because you said that there wasn't that, aftercare support, which there isn't. So for so many people, like you said, they will just go back and they'll redevelop old habits and bad habits. But was there that one turning point? Was there that conversation that you might have had with someone, that video watch, that experience seen? Or was it all just a matter of waking up one day and thinking, I'm just going to change my life now for the better?
And as a kind of additional point to that, so because you mentioned you're in this kind of you're in an environment with the same people who've probably committed very similar crimes to you. A lot of times when people do get out of prisons, they will recommit those same crimes. So you really do need to be around the right people, because you are the product of your environment. So what was it that shifted, and what was it that got you around those same people? Because a lot of people come out of prison for drug offenses. They'll go to a safe injecting room and be around the same people that they got in trouble with in the first place.
Yeah, so I love these questions, guys, really do, because it really does just open up another conversation around what did take place. Because, I mean, to put it down to one thing, there definitely wasn't one thing. There was multiple things. But the thing is that, and this is something that I really want to drop for your audience, is that the reason that we say stuck in the cycle is because the pain of making change is greater than the pain of staying the same. But for a lot of people, it does get to a point, usually at rock bottom, where the pain of changing is less than staying the same. And that's where I got to, because there was multiple things that took place in my life, right? Because we're motivated by 2 things in life, right? Pain or pleasure. There's only 2 motivators in life, right? So a lot of the time we're trying to move away from pain, not move towards pleasure. And so for me, I was in fucking pain. So I'll take you through probably 3 or 4 events that took place in my life that really just were wake-up calls for me. And this isn't in no chronological order whatsoever. There's multiple things that took place, but I'll go back to the first thing I remember, right? Was the longest time I spent in jail was 1.5 years. And I remember sitting in there, and I was in the reception wing, right? So the reception wing was C8 here on the in Brisbane prison at R&R, which is Arthur Gorrie, it's called. It's like a reception jail, right? So anyone that comes off the street goes in here. And obviously I was working there at the time, because you're either in there for a week, maybe 2 weeks max, and you get sent out to another unit. But I got a job there because it was the easiest fucking place in the jail. It was just like, you got... It honestly was the easiest jail I've ever done. I had a single cell, didn't have to share my cell with anyone. The screws weren't too, prison officers were pretty cruisy, like as far as it goes. They were pretty low key. And so I was like, fuck, I'm just going to stay here. How good's that? But what I noticed was that I saw the same people coming in and out over and over and over. I literally remember seeing this one guy come in 3 or 4 times in the year. And I thought to myself, I'm like, look at this fucking loser. Like, what are you doing, bro? And this is my 5th time in jail out of the 6, right? And I was like, oh, hang on a second. Penny drop moment. That's me. I'm that guy. Like, that fucking loser is me. And I'd heard about this guy that I knew that had been locked up, and I hadn't seen him come back. And he was saying that he'd got his personal training certificate and he was doing really well. And I was like, fuck, well, if he can do that, why can't I? Like, at the point in time, I was running a lot of the training in jail. Like, I had about 4 or 5 boys that had trained with me every day. So like, we'll always, out there in the yard doing our thing. And I found almost like a bit of leadership in that. And I was like, well, fuck, if I can do that in here, imagine if I've got like a gym, how good would that be? So I had this idea around doing this. And so anyways, I get out, lo and behold, a week or 2 later, I'm back on the pipe. Same shit, right? I get straight back out into the same environment. My partner at the time was literally like pretty much holding it down for me, like running the ball up while I was in jail. I got out to plenty of cash, plenty of drugs, and I was like, fuck yeah, sweet, let's just keep doing what we're doing. Right? I think I was clean for maybe about a week, and then a good friend of mine got shot and killed, and it really made me spiral. And so anyways, I went back to the old lifestyle, and then some other shit happened. So there was a lot of little things that sort of took place, and One thing was I got tied up with an outlaw motorcycle gang, and they were trying to get me to rat out a good friend of mine. That good friend of mine, there was no way I was throwing him under the bus for anyone. And I sort of give him the heads up. The gang turned on me over some shit and robbed me like maybe $100,000 worth of shit. And I was just like, you know what? Fuck, maybe this isn't for me. And then I found that, and this is actually after the fact. Anyways, so that happened. And then a few weeks later, I had an incident where I had a 410 shotgun put down my throat over 20 grand. And the guy that did it was well known for being a nutcase, like not well. And so all it takes is for him to pull that trigger and I wouldn't be here any longer. And so I said, you know what, bro? You take the fucking 20 grand. By the way, you want my shirt while you're at it? How about my shoes? Like, take it, man. Whatever you want, right? And anyways, I'm glad I did because a few weeks later, he blew someone's leg off over 5K. So, yeah, that was a very, very big turning point for me. And so at the time, my kid's mum was pregnant. Right. And I had this moment of clarity where I was like, is this the environment that I want to be raising a kid in? And anyways, long story short, I'm going to take full ownership here. This is something that I'm going to be very vulnerable about, which I really struggled to share for a long time. But I wanted to leave her for a very long time, but I didn't know how to. And I'd started as a personal trainer at this point, and there was a pretty good looking thing at the gym that was giving me plenty of attention. So I actually left her for another woman, but got out of that environment. And then from that night onwards, I never smoked meth again. I literally just made the choice and got away from it because of once again, the pain. The pain was so great that if I was to stay the same, I was going to end up dead, back in jail, or bring a kid, even worse, bring a kid into the world where he hasn't got the opportunities or the chance to thrive. And so I left my kid's mum for another woman. Still something that I hold a lot of shame around to this day because I had nothing to do with my son for the first 6 months of his life. But it was also the best move that I ever made. You know, it was also the best move I ever made because since then, so that was, I guess, like maybe May, June, July, whenever it was. I can't remember what year that was. It was about 8 years ago now. And the next time that I smoked meth was one time at Christmas. And then since then, so let's say 7 years ago, I've never smoked meth again, never touched it, had no temptation, no thoughts, no feelings. Like, don't get me wrong, it pops up into my head every once in a while. And I'm like, fuck, how good would a fucking 7 day bender be? How good would that be? Let's do it. You know, and then it's just like, nah. But yeah, boys, that's the main sort of, I guess, chain of events that took place that were the real turning points for me in my life.
I'm so curious to know because most people will always be curious about meth and what actually the effects are like, because I think you've mentioned before the statistic is like less than 5% whoever try will actually effectively
5%.
get off it.
5%.
What is it?
End up in addiction, active addiction, will ever stop smoking meth completely.
Wow.
So what is it about it that's so captivating, that's so, you know, and I guess I'll put a trigger warning out because there might be a bit of sensitive material, especially for people who might be recovering from it. But just, I suppose, for kind of people who have never experienced it, nor do they want to, but are curious about what the effects are like, what would be the best way to describe it?
So I'm going to preface this, first of all, by saying I'm not by any way condoning or encouraging people to smoke meth because it is literally something that ruins lives, completely ruins lives, as it did mine for a very, very long time. But to put it into simple words for you, it was the best thing I ever felt in my entire life, right? So for someone that's obviously struggled with self-worth, struggled with confidence, struggled to really know who I was, it made me feel about 10 feet tall. All the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I felt like I could take over the fucking world on this. Let's go, which is why you'll have so many people sitting around in crack houses, smoking meth, talking about all the things they're going to do, but never doing them, right? It is the single most addictive substance there is on the planet, okay? It is something that makes everything better, everything in life better. Sex, fuck, man, you're an instant porn star. It's amazing, incredible, right? You fuck for hours, right? Everything you want, confidence. Like, I'm not a violent person, but like, shit, something goes down, let's go. Whose door are we kicking in? Let's fucking go. Let's boogie, right? It honestly just improves everything in life temporarily, very, very temporarily. And then the come down hits, right? You start coming down, you're fucking angry, you're pissed off at the world. You don't care who you rob, who you rip off, who you fuck over to get more of it. You shit on your best friends, you ruin relationships, you end up looking like a putrid junkie. I was 59 kilos. Okay, I'm 6'2". I was 59 kilos when I went to jail for the first time. disgustingly skinny, right? I had no self-worth. I would shower maybe once every 2 or 3 days. I was driving from one end of the fucking Southeast Queensland to the next, back and forth, and sleeping on the side of the highway in a car. I was living in a car at one point. Like, it literally took absolutely fucking everything from me as quickly as it gave it to me. It was the single most diabolical thing that's ever happened to me or been a part of my life. So it's in no way, shape, or form anything that I'm encouraging. But to give you an idea of why it becomes so addictive is because straight away, boom, I could talk to anyone. I could hang out with people. I had fucking this community of people. But not only that, let's just talk about the fact that I was selling drugs. That gave me power. Something that I never had was significance, right? I never felt like I was significant, which is one of our basic human needs, right? The feeling of being wanted. And I had my phone blowing up constantly. It didn't matter if it was a crackhead junkie or, some crackhead chick that was, sweet going to suck a dick for a rock. Like, I was desired. And that's what it actually gave me, which is why I was stuck in the cycle for so long, because I had so little self-worth that I would take anyone that would give me attention. And this is giving me multiple fucking attention every day.
So then when you do come across people that are in these circles now with all the incredible work that you do, I'm sure it's such a unique discussion per person, but there would, in the same sense, be a lot of reoccurring themes. You, in a sense, sounds like it was one day penny dropped and there was an element of a cold turkey approach. Is that something that you encourage to people in the way, in the people that you work with now, or is it a lot more complex than just saying stop?
It is a lot more complex than just saying stop. You've got to be at that point where it's literally make or break if you want to walk away from a cold turkey like that. I do, with all the men that I work with, I have a non-negotiable, which is no drugs, alcohol, womanizing, or gambling for the next 6 months while we're working together. And they have to make a pledge to that before we start working together. So we do take a cold turkey approach. However, cold turkey, for a lot of the time, people don't realize that, not having something to replace that with or trying to wean down isn't exactly a difficult thing when you have the right people around you. But the thing is that when I did it, I had no one around me. And so I went straight back to other coping mechanisms. I went from, smoking meth to snorting cocaine and drinking every weekend because it's more acceptable, right? I went from doing that to fucking as many women as I possibly could because it's more acceptable. It's what boys do, right? And so the idea is that when I work with people, I guess one thing you did say there is it's a case-by-case thing. Like, everyone's completely different. But one thing that rings true through absolutely every single one of the men that I've worked with, every single one, it always comes back to a lack of self-worth. And while we're trying to address drugs and alcohol, if we only address that, it doesn't matter what you do. Other things will continue to pop up as coping mechanisms because you're only addressing a symptom. You're putting a fucking Band-Aid over an axe wound. It's not going to fucking work. So until you actually address the underlying issue, the underlying root cause, which is self-worth, nothing will ever change. On a whole, nothing will ever change long-term for that person. So whatever it looks like is, first of all, identifying where that self-worth issue comes from, but then also looking at how we can address that and help that man that I work with men, but man, woman, whatever it might be, to build that self-worth back up through simple things like discipline, being a man of your word or woman of your word, right? Actions that you obviously commit to each day, non-negotiables. What else? Exercise. Okay, let's look at the basic human needs. So moving the body, sunlight, water, good food. So overall health. Looking at these sorts of things are things that are really overlooked, right? You go to a rehab clinic and they're like, okay, cool, we're going to give you these Valiums. Okay, they're going to replace one substance with another. And you know what? Hey, look at you now. You're clean because they've taken the person from the volatile environment, put them into an environment where there is no drugs, there's no alcohol, there's no chance of relapsing because they haven't got that shit there, right? Then they get put back into the real world without actually, and this is not the case for all rehab clinics, but then they get put back into the real world without actually addressing the root cause in depth, right? 2-3 weeks of a fucking detox program isn't enough to change someone's habits on a physiological level, right? That shit's ingrained in their psyche. It's ingrained in their subconscious. And so until they actually make that change, obviously with whatever it is the root cause is, the self-worth issues, until they start to build that self-worth, nothing ever changes because it will just continue to resurface. Right. So I guess to answer your question there, like the cold turkey approach, it's not exactly a cold turkey approach because you're replacing one thing with another. You're just not replacing it with other drugs. Right. And until we can replace that, that original coping mechanism, which obviously might have been drugs and alcohol, with, let's say, the gym or running or having, men that you can lean on, or, whatever it might be. For me now, it's skydiving. But until you can actually replace that thing with something healthier and then actually address the root cause, which is a self-worth issue, then you're going to continue to revert back to the first thing, because what we're chasing is dopamine, right? We're chasing something that gives us that feeling of that good feeling, right? Dopamine is one of the feel-good chemicals, one of the things that gets obviously released when we take drugs. Now, how can you expect going for a run or going to the gym to be anywhere near the same as snorting a line of cocaine or smoking meth? It's never going to be the case. So the problem that people have is they're trying to replace one thing with one thing, but the one thing they're trying to replace is the thing that gives them more dopamine than anything there is, right? So they need to reset their baseline for what dopamine is within their body or what feels good by replacing that one thing with 10, 15 different things instead of just one.
Yeah, a cocaine addict can't sniff their way out of their own addiction. It's one of those things that requires much more self-work and deep work. And I'm curious to know, a lot of times that people struggle with self-worth issues and self-sabotage, they also struggle with the idea of them believing that they don't deserve good things. They don't deserve X, Y, and Z, because when they were younger, they experienced some form of trauma. Maybe it was a parent that just, abandoned them. And to that point, they don't know how to bring the best version of themselves, because for a very long time, that version of themselves was very much neglected by a caregiver. And that might be the message that they have, that I don't deserve good things. I don't deserve to go to gym. I don't deserve to take care of myself. I don't deserve to treat my body like a body that is worth kind of taking care of. I'm curious to know, in kind of the line of work that you're doing, do you see that as a common theme of people just being like, I don't deserve good things?
Well, here's the thing, right? If there's a self-sabotaging pattern that's taking place, it always comes back to a limiting belief or underlying belief of not being good enough, right? Whether it's, I don't deserve wealth, I don't deserve to be successful, I don't deserve to have a partner, whatever it might be, right? The self-sabotage is a self-fulfilling prophecy for an underlying belief. So until they address those beliefs in the belief system, nothing's ever going to change. Like, once again, like I said, the self-sabotage will show up in different ways. But let's say they go from smoking meth every day to then, they're running a business, they're doing really well, but the self-worth is still a fucking issue. Okay. They get a lump sum from a client, and all of a sudden they rinse that cash before they even know what they've done with it, because what they need to do is confirm the belief that they're not good enough or that they aren't going to be successful through the actions that they take. And so, like, when it comes to that, there's never going to be any change unless they obviously address the underlying root cause or the underlying belief, right? And so to change that belief, you need to start to actually stack, I call it stacking rocks on a ladder, right? So it's like setting little goals, setting little things that you can put in place that you can achieve. And those little goals could be as simple as, I'm going to get up on my first alarm and not hit snooze. I'm going to get up and have a cold shower. I'm going to journal every day. I'm going to go for a fucking 100-meter walk. Like, just do something different to what you did yesterday. 3 to 5 little non-negotiables. I have like a Simpson hand then. 3 to 5 little non-negotiables that you commit to and do those things every day. And what that does is it starts to build self-worth. Because every time that you say you're going to do something and don't follow through on it, what you're doing is you're telling yourself that you're not worthy of that thing. So for instance, I'm not going to go out this weekend and drink. And then by Friday, it rolls around, you're out there with the boys. It's like, oh, well, fuck it. What you're telling yourself is that the drugs, the alcohol, and all the things you said you weren't going to do are more important than yourself, right? You've broken that integrity with yourself. And so by setting some small little, this is literally the way that I work with every single one of the guys I work with, is like, okay, first of all, let's get clear on what it looks like. What are you struggling with? What are the areas you're struggling in? Why is it that you're doing those things? Cool. Okay, let's set some goals around your health, your wealth, your professional life, your personal life, and your relationships. Set some small goals and start working towards those goals. And when you start to, I guess, obviously tick those things off, it's like giving that little bit of a dopamine release. It's giving that little bit of a feel good, right? It's like, oh, okay, you know what? Maybe I am more of the man than I thought I was. Okay. So then you're building and building and building and increasing and obviously building momentum. And before you know it, you've now gone 6 months without the drugs and the alcohol because you've started having other things that you're working towards, right? And what that does is it reinforces that new belief that you are worthy, right? Because every time you go back to your self-sabotaging behaviors, you just go back to square one.
What I love about this is the fact that it honestly sounds like a fundamental recipe across the large spectrum of humanity. And what I mean by that is, like, you've got that rock bottom end of the spectrum, which we're touching on now. And then you've got that other end of the spectrum where, it might just be the normal person going about their life, living at home with their parents. Everything's great, but they're feeling still unworthy for some reason. And they might fall into a depressive state and they're trying to will themselves out of it. Now, they might not be a drug addict. They might not be an alcoholic, but they're still looking for that way to level their life up. And oftentimes, these are the things we turn to, right? It's that better food, it's that moving the body, it's sleep, it's all of those fundamental things. And I think just hearing that from you, someone firsthand, it's not something that I've ever, thought about to the same extent, that, it's just the fundamentals that are just done in different people's lives. It doesn't matter what type of life you're living, you're still going to do the same fundamentals, which I believe is just, it's quite reaffirming, hopefully, for a lot of people to hear that as well.
Yeah, well, it doesn't matter whether it's a drug addiction, whether it's you're trying to do well in business, or whether you're trying to get that dream girl, right? Apply the simple principles of being a high value man, which are, integrity, fucking showing up for yourself, obviously looking after your body, eating good food. Like, these are all things that build character within self, and obviously then build self-worth as well, because what you're doing is you're telling yourself that you are worth it by doing these things, right? It's very, very simple. It's so simplistic that people overlook it. But notice I said simple, not easy, right? Because you do have to create change, and change, once again, a lot of the time is uncomfortable. And the pain for change, obviously going through the state of, well, for instance, if we're talking about getting off drugs, this is a great example. Actually, let's use the gym as an example, because this is perfect. Everyone understands this, right? A guy's overweight, right? He wants to go to the gym. He's like, fuck yeah, I'm going to lose some weight. But then he goes to the gym and it's hard. And he's like, well, I'm just going to go back to doing what I was doing before, which made me feel good temporarily. Like, it's okay. I mean, I'm not dying of cancer just yet, so like, who cares, right? But he's still sitting there. He still feels like shit, and he's reverted back to his old pattern, because the change is obviously, like, it's more painful, because fuck, he just did leg day for the first time in his entire life, and he's got DOMs through the fucking ass. Like, everyone knows that it goes through. Anyone that's a gym bro knows what that's like. Yeah, I'm not going back to the gym
for the next 4 days.
100%. Like, get me a walking frame. I need to get to the toilet, right? So he's just fucking sitting on the couch, not moving. But for instance, if the pain was greater, like, dude, you've got literally fucking cancer, and the only way to fix this cancer is to stop smoking meth and go to the gym. Well, some people will be like, I'm going to stay the same as I was, because they've already lost their soul, they've lost their spirit, they've lost their drive for life. Whereas most people will be like, I need to make this fucking change, because the pain of me staying the same is now greater than me making a change.
Was there that one thing for you, or those couple of things for you, that you really just lent to? Was it the gym? Was it food? Was it sleep? What were those key things for you? Because I feel like as humans, we love hearing things from the horse's mouth and taking that and really latching onto it. So what were those key ones for you?
Oh, bro, it's funny that you say food, sleep, and gym, because those are three things a crackhead does not do. So honestly, bro, like, to be fair, like, the big thing for me was gym. Okay, so I started training in jail. The first time I ever picked up a weight, which is my 59 kilo body, doing push-ups and chin-ups and dips and all that sort of stuff, was in jail. Like, if you're in jail and if you are in there, the only three things you really can do is play cards, shoot drugs, or train, right? That's it. So I was like, well, I'm going to play cards and I'm going to train. I'm going to do what all the other boys do. So here I am. I was probably walking around like a bloody, looking like like a rooster with like real skinny little legs and that, like, how they look around, puffing my chest out, thinking like I'm the man after doing like 3 push-ups. It literally saved my life. It completely saved my life, because it gave me a purpose. It gave me goals. Like, let's just look at that. Anyone can set a goal around fitness. Okay. I want to lose 5 kilos. I want to run 2 kilometers. I want to do a marathon, whatever it might be. It's so easy to set a goal around fitness, because it's so tangible, right? And it has all the metrics of what you need for a good goal, okay? It's specific, it's measurable, it's attainable. Obviously, depending on what level it's at, it's realistic. And you can put a time constraint around, I'm going to achieve this in the next 2 weeks, whatever it might be. But that's obviously the smarter acronym that people use for goal setting. So if anyone that hasn't obviously heard that before, but the thing that most people are missing there is the most important part is the emotion attached to what the goal is going to bring for them. So E, and then R, which is something I teach, the smarter goal setting, right? Which is revision. R, how often do you revise that goal? So fitness is the perfect way to actually look at that. It's a perfect way to set a goal. Like, if you have never set a goal before, go, all right, I'm going to run a fucking sub 25 minute 5K. Great. That's something that anyone can achieve if they put the work in for it. Simple as that. But yeah, the biggest thing that honestly saved my life, the one big thing that I focused on, was fitness, because it gave me that purpose. It gave me that meaning. It made me feel good. Like, fuck, I'm going to the gym. Started to, put on some weight. I'm looking good. Look at me go. All right. Like, am I going from literally a guy that was so skinny, had to run around the shower to get wet, to now being like, I'm getting a bit of a female attention. I was getting all these good feelings within myself. And it's literally as simple as fitness for me. That was the big thing that changed my life. But obviously from there, there was a lot of other things like personal development, working myself. I stumbled across some Tony Robbins videos and meditation, breath work, reading, just learning more about myself and actually going within. Rather than looking for things externally, because being a drug addict, because I was moving fucking bulk drugs. Like at one point there, let's just say I was doing a lot. I was doing a lot. Yeah, I had the Rolexes, I had nice cars, I had real nice clothes. I was going to Pack Fair, which is a shopping center up here in Broadbeach, just rinsing a couple of $1,000s every time, right? I'll do that a couple of times a month, right? And it was like nothing. But I was always looking for this thing externally to make me feel good. But the more of the external thing I got, the more of the external thing I need. It's like that unquenchable thirst. Like you think about Dracula, right? The vampire, he's always like needing to suck more blood to feed that hunger. That was what it was like when I was looking for self-worth. It was like I was looking for that externally to myself. And the more of it I got, the more of it I needed, whether it was through drugs, alcohol, women, or gambling, or whatever it might have been. Like obviously buying things, it was never enough. When I started to go inwards, that's when things really changed. And I'll tell you right now, it was the most uncomfortable thing I've ever fucking done, because I had to sit with myself and hold a mirror up and go, you know what? I'm not the man that I thought I was. I'm not the man that I'm wearing the mask of. Like, because I was literally walking around with this mask on, just being this guy that was this badass, right? I'm fucking not a badass. I was playing gangster. You know what I mean? And when the real gangsters came along, I was like, you know what? Not for me. I'm out. Right? Don't get me wrong. There was always those moments of just like, I did hold myself for a really long time in that lifestyle. But the thing was, like, once again, the pain got too much, and I was like, I need to change.
Mate, that's honestly it's one of the coolest hero's journeys you can go through. Because a lot of people talk about rock bottom, and obviously everyone's got their own version of rock bottom and everything like that. But I think going from serious drug addiction from prison to resetting your life in a way that you can actually positively impact others, it's a very admirable thing, but it's bloody challenging. And I kind of want to give you a plug. I want to ask, where can people best find you?
Oh, bro. So Ben Lowe Coaching on Instagram. We've also got a massive project we're putting on next year. It's called the Interchange Change for Good Challenge. So look, with what I do, I work with men aged 25 to 45. Obviously, I work with some younger, some older. But anyways, that's like the age bracket. I work with men who are stuck in that pattern of self-sabotage that I was, because I was stuck in that pattern of self-sabotage for a very, very long time. 15 years of my life, if I'm exact. Right? So from 15 to 30. It's only 2 years ago, from 32 now, that I actually broke out of that completely. But I thought to myself, instead of intervening, which is what I'm doing, I'm giving these men intervention. Imagine if instead of intervening, we could prevent by working with kids that are 15 or younger, right? And so I was in the process of setting up a charity, which has been put on hold for now. But we've got this massive event that we're putting on next year, which is a 24-hour endurance challenge. It's a 4-hour run, 4-hour downhill mountain biking session, 4-hour gym workout, 4-hour pack march, and a 4-hour open water kayaking session. And you can sign up as an individual and do the whole thing, or you can sign up as a team of 4. And whether you do the whole thing or whether you do one event, 2 events, or pay the price point and do the whole thing, every dollar raised from this is going to support a charity called eSwab. And what they do is they take kids from juvie who are struggling with exactly the same shit that I was, right? And they rehabilitate them. They give them skills. They teach them how to be men and women as well. They work with young women as well. And out of 276 kids they've worked with in the last 4 years, only 4 have ever returned to prison.
Wow.
So just to drive that home for you guys, right? 80% of men between the ages of 10 to 25 that end up in the juvenile justice system or in prison end up back in prison within the first 12 months, 80%. So the fact that they've got a 99.9 pretty much success rate is crazy. And so if you want to find out more about that, which is something really close to my heart that we're doing, and you can come hang out with me. I'm doing the whole thing as an individual, so it's going to be fucking epic. www.interchange.org is the website, has all the details for that. But as far as it goes for just getting in contact with me, I'm happy to have a conversation with anyone, anytime. Ben Lowe Coaching is the best way to find me on Instagram.
Awesome, mate. Thank you so much for all of that. And we will be absolutely linking that down below in our show notes. And mate, a big big thank you for coming on today and sharing your story that is just continuing, and honestly just sounds like it's getting started, because you're doing incredible things, and you're an innovative fella, and you're changing lives, truly changing lives. And it really does seem like the sky's the limit. So we can't wait to see what it does hold for you in the next 6 months, 12 months and beyond. And we're here for the ride, mate. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks, lads. It's literally, only just the beginning. So looking forward to seeing what comes in the near future. But yeah, thanks, lads, for having me on. Really appreciate it. And if anything, if someone takes anything away from this, the only thing I want them to take away is that no matter how far gone you think you are, there is always hope. And I'm living proof of that.
Beautiful. Thank you, mate.